I'm Harley.
I'm David.
Welcome to another episode of PVM Perspective, a podcast about getting the most out of RuneScape PVM. And before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who gave us fantastic feedback on our first episode. We had a bunch of people who reached out all over the internet, and I was very surprised by how much positive feedback we got. And so thank you very much for all of that. And the first thing we are going to cover tonight is getting the perks. We ended the last episode, I don't remember exactly where we ended it, but we talked about perks somewhere near the end of that episode, so we're going to kind of pick up here as far as how to best get the perks that you're going to want for Slayer. And so I will hand the floor over to you, David.
Yeah, so basically last episode I went through kind of a list of perks, so this will be how to get them. So for the weapon perks, the kind of three that we talked about were Precise 4, Equilibrium 2. That's the overall best offensive perk in the game that you could put on your weapon. It can be obtained from 5 precise components. If you are extremely rich, you can try it with 4 precise, 1 armadillo. People that I've talked to have said that that is not a significant improvement on the likelihood of you getting it. Now, forewarning, this perk's extremely rare. It took me around 1,100 attempts. I have had a friend who's done over 2,500 attempts and is yet to get a single one. So I definitely would not suggest going for this combination until your 120 invention. I would suggest using the boost level on the invention cape in order to get yourself the best possible combination for it. Luckily, I was able to make tremendous amounts of weapon gizmos because early on in the first few days of invention, I went around all the different sword shops in the game and the White Knight shop in Falador and others, and got tremendous amounts of blade parts and base parts, and I've got the third one that's needed for weapon gizmos, but you kind of get the point. You're going to need a lot of weapon gizmos, and you need to get a lot of precise perks. For those of you who did the disassembling bows on day 1 and day 2 of invention as the training method, you'll have a lot of precise perks. If you don't, I used U shield bows. The GE limit is pretty high. I would use both U bows and U shield bows, disassemble maybe 10k of each, and then start going for the combination after that. For those of you who don't have the time or money and aren't willing to go for that to that level of effort, Precise 5 is about 1% less good, and it comes from 5 armadillo components. The cheapest way, of course, is to augment either armadillo top or armadillo bottom, get it to level 9, disassemble it, and there you go. You'll have your components for the perk. If you want to get it quickly, you could buy armadillo bucklers, armadillo helms, armadillo gloves, etc., until you've got enough armadillo components for Precise 5. I would not suggest going for Precise 5 with fewer than 5 armadillo components, because even if you were to get it, the chance of you getting it is extremely low, and so I would just go for the 100% guarantee on that, especially when armadillo components are pretty pricey, even if you do the disassembling level 9 item method. The other one is Aftershock 3. Aftershock 3 should be paired with either Precise 5 or P4E2. It's from 5 Illusionkin components. The easiest way to get them is from Dragon Rider lances. You'll need 2 of them because a lance at level 9 only gives you 4 components. Essence, Zerosian Essence is also possible. In my experience, it's an extremely low likelihood, and you'll find yourself spending less money to just fork out the 25 mil for a lance and maybe 20 mil for an animacore body or a top or bottom. The way that I used to disassemble lances was to level them up at Eretz, RAP. Those are no longer viable, so just use whatever method. Sarah, God War's Encampment, Abyssal Demons are probably the best, but they're of course difficult to find a world for. Even the Abyss itself is decently good, although not quite as good as those other 2 options. The third, and this is only if you can't afford Aftershock 3, would be Equilibrium 3. So you would be going with Precise 5, Equilibrium 3 in this instance. That's from 5 rumbling components. The cheapest way to get those is either to do raids, spend techie, and disassemble pieces of Primeval Tempest or Terralith, or to disassemble Tempest or Tectonic Mask. It's not quite guaranteed to give you Equilibrium 3, but at 120 Invention, it seems to be about 5 attempts with 5 Rumbling that you'll be getting Equilibrium. The other perks aren't really worth it for weapon. Ricochet might seem useful, or Caraming, sorry. Caraming might seem useful, but with Aggression Potions, it's actually totally obsolete. Prior to Aggression Potions, it was awesome to be able to tag 6 or 7 monsters at once. Now there's really no need for it, because anywhere where you'll be tagging that many creatures, you'll want to be using aggro pots anyways. So that's kind of the weapon perks and how to get them. Armor perks are more complicated, and there are many different combinations. So there are basically 2 ways to do your Slayer setup. The first is to have multiple different versions of power armor with different perks on each of them. That's kind of more expensive and more effort. I used to do it where I had a different set of legs for a Demon's Task, Dragon's Task, etc. I kind of switched over to hybrid armor for Slayer. It's not quite as efficient because, of course, it's hybrid armor. You're not going to be getting that offensive boost, but it's far easier to justify spending lots of money on really excellent perks if you're only going to use them once. And second, it's just a whole lot easier to do Slayer with the hybrid set because you aren't going to have to be constantly changing your gear out. And then third, on a personal reason, I've been doing a lot of boss tasks, which includes Calfight Queen and Calfight King, and having hybrid armor just makes that a little bit less annoying to do because I have to use so many fewer gear switches. So the perks that I'm going to talk about are going to assume that you're using combination perks and that you're using Sliske armor. If you're not doing either of those things, then you have a little bit more freedom in mobility, because if you're using, say, tier 70 armors, you have a lot. You could just have 5 or 6 different sets of subjugation, armadillo, etc., and basically tailor your perks to your needs. So there's kind of 2 different types of perks. There are perks that are easily combinable and with other things that could go with almost anything. So those include Crackling, Biting, and Genocidal. And then there are perks that are more difficult to get in combination with others that are kind of less universal. So Impatient 3 is nearly impossible to get with anything else. And the individual stat boosters, things like Dragon Slayer, Demon Slayer, etc., while they can be combined with other things, you kind of have to get the combinations correct in order to do them efficiently. So the way that I have my perks set up is I have on my legs Impatient 3, and Impatient 3 should be the first priority for any setup, in my opinion. I think that it's just overall one of the most useful perks in the game. Of course, it makes it so that basic abilities have a chance to do 3%, give you 3% extra adrenaline. It allows you to Sunshine or Zerk much more often. Now, if you're planning on functionally AFKing almost entirely when you do Slayer, this isn't really worth doing because you're not going to be using thresholds. And the main reason why Impatient 3 is so good is that it allows you to threshold much more quickly when you do an ultimate. If you're not planning on doing that, then I would honestly pick a different perk for that slot. If you are planning on paying attention, focusing, tryharding, doing tasks like the recent Gemstone Dragons, even speeding up something like Rune Dragons, and certainly if you're doing the elite mobs, or if you're planning on using a Scythe for Slayer, then I would definitely recommend it. The second perk that I think is just overall really excellent is Genocidal. Genocidal works to improve your DPS for the more creatures that you kill. It can combine with almost anything. I currently have my Genocidal combined with Demon Slayer. The reason I did that is because I found Demon Slayer extremely expensive to combine with other perks, or just difficult to get in general. If you have the money to disassemble lots of third age equipment, then I definitely recommend Biting 2 plus Demon Slayer. But if you don't have the money to disassemble third age armor for a Slayer perk, then the combination that I found that I actually haven't seen anywhere else was 3 dexterous components and 2 undead components. and that seemed to yield Genocidal plus Demon Slayer almost every single time. Dexterous components can be gotten, from all kinds of things. They're relatively common. They're real easy to get. You'll probably have lots of them. You get them from swords, long swords, maces, bows, crossbows, really all kinds of stuff. The undead components are a little harder to come by. Basically, the easiest way to get them is just to disassemble malevolent helmets. If you're willing to spend some time, and I wouldn't really recommend this because of how long it'll take, you could augment a kite, one of the 3 Barrows kite shields, the Rise of the 6 kite shields, level up to 9 and disassemble that. But I would just disassemble because it's fairly cheap.
I've found magic stocks to be pretty great for Dexter's components, as you were saying, as far as cost versus what you get, because I used to make a lot of equipment siphons, and that was a pretty good source.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. So there you go. Genocidal plus Demon Slayer. Because so many of the best tasks are demons, Abyssal Demons, obviously everyone tries to do those. As you can tell, Ripper Demons, some of the best XP in the game. The 7% boost helps tremendously. And Calgarian Demons, which is another one of the best XP tasks in the game, also requires that. I imagine that it's not, I think it would be likely that the more demons released as 120 Slayer comes out, just because it's a popular thing to kill. And so Demon Slayer for sure, I would recommend. It also seems to work on Krill, the Zami boss. And so if you do your greater demons at Krill, then that'll improve your DPS there as well. So that's what I have on my legs currently. On my top, and this is a little repetitive, and this is just because I spent a lot of money trying to get Biting 2 combined with something else, and I have Biting 2 plus Genocidal on my top. This was before I even knew it was possible to get Genocidal plus Demon Slayer, so obviously if you could get Biting 2 with something else, or even if you could afford Biting 3 on your Slayer gear, or get Biting 2, or can afford to attempt Biting 2 plus Undead Slayer, or Biting 2 plus some whatever, then I totally recommend doing that, especially because of how easy it is to combine Genocidal with Demon Slayer. But regardless, assuming that you do want Biting 2 plus Genocidal, the combination is 3 direct components, 1 undead component, and 1 powerful. Powerful components come from battle staves. Undead components come from malevolent helms, and direct components usually come from spears or battle axes. I recommend adamant spears, seem to give them at a reasonable rate for their cost. Rune spears, if you can afford them, a little bit better. Going for that combination is kind of expensive. I think that if you're able to get Biting 2 by itself, that'd be good. The problem with that is that Biting 2 is so often paired with Cautious when you're not going with something else, and Cautious is obviously, pretty bad for Slayer. Obviously you're going to want to have auto retaliate on for almost every task. I can't think of where you wouldn't want auto retaliate on. If you want to AFK at all, you need auto retaliate on. So you can end up wasting a lot of money going for Biting 2 by itself. So either get Biting 3 or attempt combinations, or just get it with Genocidal and do what I'll suggest in a second. The last perk that I have on my main Slisuke gear is Crackling 3 plus Dragon Slayer. Crackling 3 is amazing. It's quite a good perk. It's, a fairly good boost to DPS, and it can be combined with almost anything else. And so the combination for that is 4 explosive plus 1 dragonfire. The explosive come from hand cannons. The dragonfire comes from dragonfire shields. It's not super common. I would say it's maybe 10% of the time you'll get it. It's oftentimes you'll get Crackling 2 plus Dragon Slayer. It's up to you whether that's good enough for you. I figured I might as well go for the better version of it. But really, that's kind of a personal choice. Now, the thing that I was mentioning previously, and I tried for Biting 2 plus Undead Slayer. It was, and I got Undead Slayer with some other things, like Undead Slayer plus Genocidal was super easy to get. But I could not get Undead Slayer with Demon Slayer to save my life. I could not get Undead Slayer with Biting 2. And I already had the Dragon Slayer Crackling 3 perk. So what I have is I just have a pair of tier Anima Core of Zamorak legs, I think that it would be perfectly fine to just use the tier 70 Armada legs for this. The only place where the only undead creatures that I currently kill for Slayer, I ranged because I use chins at I use chins at Edemu. If you instead melee Edemu, which is probably the more common way to do it with a scythe, and just either a pair of Bandos legs or Anima Core of Zamorak or Torva, whichever you can afford, and just put your Undead Slayer and your Impatient 3 on those legs, and then just for that one specific task, you'll switch out your legs. I think that, interestingly, when Menaphos comes out, I think it's possible that lots of those creatures are going to be undead. It's the city of the dead, and so it's possible that Undead Slayer could become much more useful in those scenarios. But for now, I'm kind of sticking with the method of having them on a separate pair of legs. If indeed 100 to 120 Slayer becomes with undead creatures, I might do some more attempts at biting 2 plus Undead Slayer, but for now, I'm going to stick with what I've got, because essentially my Sliske armor is good for every single task except Edemu, and I just switch out my legs for that one task, so it's not too big of a deal to me. I know that's kind of a lot of information, and there's even more. Feel free to message me on Game or in Discord. We'll be doing even more talks about PvP as it relates to other combinations that you can get that are not Slayer related, but those are kind of the basic perks you're going to want to use for Slayer. In my opinion, the Scavenging perk, unless you somehow have Scavenging 3 and are an Iron Man account, or if you're a main account in general, I'm not really sure Scavenging is all that worth it. Like, yes, you'll get the occasional, noxious component or something. Maybe you'll get a couple of those on your way to 120 Slayer, but it's just as likely that you end up with 5 or 6 Oceanic components, which are functionally useless, and you're wasting a significant boost in DPS in order to attempt to get rare perks. And for me, that trade-off is just not even close to worth it. The Enhanced Efficient 3 is another option that I hear people using. I also think that while it might be nice to have a lower drain rate, I just strongly prefer to improve DPS. If you're the type who is going to just be AFKing tasks like Dark Beasts and Abyssal Demons, then maybe remove Impatient 3 and replace it with Scavenging or Efficient or a combination of the two. But if you're attempting to really min-max Slayer, go for the best XP methods. Those two perks, while they might seem good, I just don't think they're.
All right, that is fair enough. Thank you for spending 500 mil on doing that research for us.
Yeah, and I spent a big chunk of the money was trying to get Biting 2 plus Demon Slayer disassembling Third Age components, and I just it was awful. I hated it. Yeah, it was not good.
That is the frustrating side of Slayer. I forget what. I think I spent a while trying to get Equilibrium 3 with something else recently. I don't know. There was some perk that I was trying to go for, and yeah, that is the terrible side of invention. It's the fact that the combinations like Precise 4 and Equilibrium 3 work together now is kind of cool, but it's also frustrating because it's basically made. It used to just be get Precise 5, which is basically guaranteed when you have.
Oh, it is guaranteed. Yeah, it's 100% guaranteed always with 5. Yes.
Yeah. So, and now best in slot is something that's a combination that, like you said, can take 1,000+ tries depending on how lucky and or unlucky you are. So,
people seem to average getting it every 800 to 1,000 attempts. That seems to be pretty average.
All right,
and it's only about a 1% boost over Precise 5. So it's really you'll be okay with just Precise 5. No one's going to kick you off your team for not having P4E2. It's perfectly fine.
Well, that's good. All right,
especially for Slayer.
I think that wraps up getting the perks. We will go ahead and move on to our next section, which is
and I'll do one more push for Aftershock 3. I know Aftershock 3 seems expensive. The way it works is that procs based on how much damage you're doing, because during Slayer using AoEs, you're just pumping out a massive amount of damage. You're going to have Aftershock proc constantly. So it's significantly better than Equilibrium 3. I mean, use Equilibrium 3 for sure if you just don't think you can afford it. But if you're going to be going for 120 Slayer, I think that Aftershock 3 is very much worth it. Then that's just my opinion, but I think it's definitely go for it.
You know, if you think it's expensive, if you're able to solo Vindicta, well, you of course can just, you know, instead of spending the money, go and earn them yourself. If you spend 5 to 10 hours there, you'll probably get a Dragon Rider Lance and a seal of is it a seal of Zeros that lets you make the armor
it's a crest.
piece, or the crest. Yeah, the crest of Zeros that lets you make the armor piece, and you know, then you could just augment those 2 items and train them up to level 9, and you will be good to go.
Yeah, and that'll get you 2. And the important thing is 2 items gets you 2 perks. It's not just 1. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, 3 items gets you 2 perks.
Yeah.
Never mind. Yeah.
But you'll be on your way to put it in on your bossing gear if that's something you're interested in, because you'll want that perk on multiple or on your, if you're gonna put it on your scythe, you know, you can be on your way to put it in, because I think it's a weapon perk, right? I'm not lying. Yeah,
it's a weapon perk. Yeah.
So you'll want it on things at least.
I have it on. I currently have it on my staff with Sliske. I've Aftershock 3 my staff with Sliske, my Noxious staff, Nox longbow, scythe, Ascensions, wand, and then I have a bunch of Planted Feet Aftershock ones. I guess we should talk about Planted Feet real quick. Planted Feet is 100% worth it, whether you're the AFK type of Slayer or whether you're the try-hard type of Slayer. Planted Feet's phenomenal. It just straight up extends the duration of your Sunshine or Death Swiftness with a very, very, almost insignificantly small drawback. They even fixed the animation as of these patch notes, so your Sunshine actually stays up for the whole time, or your Death Swiftness, whichever one. And so I would definitely get Planted Feet. The thing about Planted Feet is that you need to make sure you maintain your Aftershock stacks in order to maximize your efficiency. There are 2 ways of doing this. One is to go for Planted Feet plus Aftershock 1. This is not a guaranteed perk, no matter what combination you use. The combination is 2 Psyware or Kaiware components, 3 Iljankin components. It's probably something like 40% of the time at 120 Invention, you'll get this combination. The other way to do it, and if you're not bossing, aka Telos or Virago are the only 2 where this is relevant. If you're not doing either Telos or Virago with pretty consistently, you could just put on a Sun Spear. That way you could put Planted Feet as one of your Sun Spear components, Aftershock 1, which is 100% guaranteed from, I believe, 3 Iljankin components as the other perk, and then you'll be able to maintain your stacks. Additionally, because the Sun Spear is a hybrid weapon, you only need 1 Planted Feet instead of several Planted Feet, because if you're going to range a task, you just switch it to the throwing, to the javelins. If you're going to mage a task, you just switch it to the staff, and there you go. You don't have to worry about having multiple Planted Feet. If you're doing a lot of Telos and Virago, again, definitely go for PFAS1. Put it on your wand. It's totally worth it. But if you're not doing those 2 bosses, then Sun Spear is more than good enough.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up getting the perks. Then we will move on. We have a little section here on getting to 99. Now, this is not going to be extremely in-depth, but we wanted to give people who are not quite at 99 some guidance on what to do. We're going to start off here as what to do starting from level 75. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so 75 to 85 is Kuradel. We're going to assume that at level 85, we'll be switching to Morvan. If you're not doing that, then you should get yourself into Elf City before ever training Slayer again, because the Morvan task list is just significantly better than Kuradel's task list. It's more diverse. There are far fewer terrible tasks on it. There are more good tasks on it. Just definitely switch over to Morvan as soon as possible. But if you are still 75, essentially, you just want to focus on doing tasks that are good for XP. That's at least my opinion here. I think that it is a little bit of a waste of time to focus on Slayer for money at that level. You can do it if you want to, and I'm not saying don't be conscious about it at all. But really, your goal should kind of be to get to Morvan as soon as possible. Harley, I know that you recently got 99 Slayer, at least compared to me, was pretty recent. What were your experiences on the difference between Kuradel and Morph in terms of their task lists? Or
so
how much experience do you have with Morph?
I have very little experience with Morph because I didn't get to Elf City till post 99 Slayer because I think I got 99 in May of last year. And I don't think I was in Elf City yet, at least because I don't remember using him until I got 99. But I can say like post 99, yeah, his assignments are definitely way better. Like in general, I'm just getting tasks that give way higher XP. Like Kuradil, I didn't get any of. I don't even know. I'm guessing these are on her list, but I didn't get any of the special Slayer monsters, like the elite Slayer mobs, like Ripper Demons or stuff like that. Never came up for me when I was trained in 99. But at Morvan, I've gotten them a ton. Stuff like air roots have definitely come up a lot more often as well. So yeah, the list is far better once you are in Elf City and getting tasks from Morvan.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is that the way tasks are weighted, which was kind of what Harley was hinting at, the weighting is much better on. But anyway, so the way I kind of organized this was just to quickly go through different tasks, say pluses and minuses in alphabetical order, just because that was the easiest way to organize it in spreadsheet form. So without further ado, and I'm going up to level 85 here, which is when you get access to Abyssal Demon. So for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to assume that once you've hit 85, you'll no longer be doing Kuradel. Because if you are, that's just, hyper inefficient. Not to be demeaning or something, it's fine, it happens, but just for the purpose of this list, that's what I'm going to be assuming. Okay, so you've got Adamant Dragons, cancel. Don't cancel or block. Pretty mediocre money, terrible XP. The other thing to factor with a task like this is it's super far from a bank. It's one of the few tasks that still takes you forever to get to, which just adds even more to its inefficiency. AVNCs, do them if you want to do Kriara. It's good XP, great money, especially if you can do Kriara well, plus you get a chance at a pet. Black Demons, fantastic. Crimson Charms, solid XP. If you don't have tier 90 weapons, it'll be a really, really long task. It's going to take you forever because she assigns just quite a few of them. But that's okay. It's a pretty solid task.
Yeah, Black Demons were one of my favorite tasks when I was getting 99 for sure. They got buffed right in the middle of me getting 99, which was interesting. They're definitely a bit beefier now than what they used to be.
Definitely beefier now. Like I said, if you don't have tier 90 weapons, it's gonna take you a long time to get the task done. But fantastic crimson rates and pretty solid in terms of XP. Not good money, but you can't have everything. So then there's Black Dragons. If you want to do QBD, then by all means do QBD. Still Queen Black Dragon, still one of the best, most consistent ways to make money in the game. However, if you're not doing QBD and you're not either hunting for Last Riders or pet at KBD, then I would not do Black Dragons. If you're desperate for... Yeah, sorry, what?
Don't the Black Dragons themselves have a pet too, I believe? So I think...
Yeah, I guess chromatic dragons were added recently. I've never attempted to get them because they aren't part of the IFB title. But yeah,
I think it's the baby dragon is from.
Yeah, the Black Dragon egg. Yeah. It's must be not. Yeah. So I suppose if you want to hunt for the chromatic dragon pets. That's not a pet that I've ever considered hunting, just because it's not, like I said, part of IFB. But you could do that potentially. Definitely not worth it in terms of GP per hour or XP per hour, unless you're doing QBD, in which case definitely worth it for GP. But regardless, all three terrible XP.
The terrible thing about them too is depending on what you do them, you'll just be fighting bots the whole time. Unfortunately, if you do want to hunt for that pet, I would say do the Why can't I think of the fairy?
I would say the evil chicken
Yeah,
lair
that's what I was
is
trying
where
to
to
think
do it,
of.
because that requires at least having started Legends Quest or having done Legends Quest. I can't remember which. I imagine very few bots have done Legends
Yeah,
Quest.
that's what I was trying to think of the
Yeah.
name of that area, but yeah, that
Yeah,
is the place you
it's
want to
right
do.
by the fairy ring. It's in Xanaris, right by the fairy ring where you enter if you would go through the cabin in the Lumbridge Swamp. There are chickens right outside of the evil chicken lair. Kill one of them, pick up a raw chicken, use the raw chicken on the thing, and there you go. You're good to go.
Plus, you can marvel at all the great old puns that used to be in RuneScape that are slightly less these days. Because I don't know, the evil chicken lair is just a
Although
cool
if you did
place.
some like at Cole or the new Penguin Quest, plenty there. So, so yeah, but for sure, it is a cool old place. All right, so then we've got Blue Dragons is next. I would, unless you need Slayer points or you really want a pet, I would skip these. Bad XP. Used to be great money back in the day. I remember doing Blue Dragons in Legacy mode in Kurdel's dungeon, using my War Tortoise, baking all of the hides and bones back when bones were like 6k each and hides were a lot. That was my favorite task when I was training 99 Slayer, but alas, it's no longer efficient to do them that
It
way.
used to be a good noob way to make money too, just to go and pick up the drops that like the higher level people were back
Yeah.
in the day. You like pick up the dragon bones and the hides, or the ones
and the dragon scales even too. Yeah,
the dragon scales were good money too.
Yep. But no more. Really bad XP, mediocre profit, not worth doing. If you need Slayer points and are desperate for them, I would almost suggest just going to Taverley and just rinsing the baby blue dragons in order to get the task done as fast as possible, because they aren't even that fast to kill, even with good weapons. Although they're fast enough, so do them. If I wouldn't completely avoid them because they're not terrible, and with note paper you can make a decent amount of money, I guess, but really not. I would try to avoid them if you can. So in Celestial Dragons, these are the bread and butter of any casual Slayer, whether you're level 75 or you're level 120. Celestial Dragons you should pretty much always do if you're the type of Slayer who just likes chill tasks that are good XP, good money, reasonably low effort, but not excellent in any of the three, if that makes sense. It's kind of pretty good in all of those categories. So I would totally do Celestial Dragons, and maybe even prefer them. Curdel assigns them at a very high rate, so preferring Celestial Dragons will mean that you get them quite often, and if you like them, then they're totally worth doing. Also, Blood Essence at Celestial Dragons, awesome. Use it. Chaos Giants, good, pretty decent money, decent XP, nothing special. They're fine. I wouldn't prefer them. Block them. Dagannoth, they're decent charms, actually very good charms, especially if you cannon them or using potions, either in the water birthplace or underneath the lighthouse. They're okay Slayer XP. If you want to do the Dagannoth Kings, then totally do Dagannoth Kings. I think it's worth it. I think that if you ever want to go for the Dagannoth King pets, I think that it's silly to ever cancel a Dagannoth task because it's just that much faster to kill them when you're on Slayer task. I don't know, Harley, have you done much of DKs recently?
I have not. I don't think I've ever done the Dagannoth Kings, so I can't really speak much about them.
Okay, well, in EOC, as long as you have tier 80 weapons, doing them on task makes them super, super easy to do. Bring a pack yak if you're nervous about it, but pretty soon, after doing it a couple times, you won't even need a pack yak. So yeah, I would recommend doing the bosses if you care at all about the pets. Elves,
it's just one of those things that I have yet to get around to because I basically skipped to harder bosses and I haven't.
Yeah,
I'm
for
slowly
sure.
working on it. IFB, but I'm not going very fast at it.
Yeah, I'm only recently started to care about IFB after I got a Vitalis. I kind of didn't care about IFB because I figured even if I got every single other boss pet, that didn't really matter because I didn't have a bit. But now that I do, I've started caring a lot more about IFB. But I definitely feel ya. So then Elves is the next one. Elves are one of the best XP tasks in the game. Unfortunately, that's only true if you do them in Elf City. This task, though, is maybe worth doing in Turanwin. The one downside is that without the elf quiver from Prifddinas, it takes kind of forever to get to them, which can be a big turnoff and really cut into your XP. If, however, you want to get a bunch of crystal teleport seeds, those are really good for crystal siphons. And also, with the update to how those work, they're relatively useful for getting around Prif once you do get there. So, while it might not be the most efficient task to do in terms of Slayer XP or GP, because their drops are kind of useful in other ways, I would not necessarily avoid them at all costs, but I wouldn't go out of my way for them either. Harley, have you killed elves for crystal teleport seeds? I know that some people have been doing that recently.
Do the ones in Prif drop it, or is it just the ones in?
It's just the ones. It's just the ones in Leda, which are the ones I'm talking about for this.
Okay,
task.
Gotcha.
Yeah, at least as far as I know, the ones in Prif drop the weapon seeds and armor seeds.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I've done a little bit of farming in Leda for the teleport. I mean, yeah, I made the augmented crystal teleport seed like the day it came out, or not augmented, whatever it's called. No, it might be augmented. I don't remember. Whatever it is, it's definitely super freaking useful because it's super useful if you aren't maxed because it gives you such an easy way around Prif. It gives you easy access to the max skilled garden, which is great if you have it unlocked because then you can actually make use of the skilling portals in there without running halfway across Prif to get there. So yeah, totally would say it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure. So there you go. That's a reason to do the task. So next, there's fire.
And also, I mean, if you have,
I
should say, I mean, it's also a great way saving those seeds and charging them up. It's a great way to get crystal components, which of course then you can use once you get to the arc and can make crystal siphons, which is a great way to make money / a great way to train skillvention because it lets you siphon all the crystal tools at tier 90 experience, so that will greatly enhance your XP an hour there. And crystal siphons are like 1.4 mil per, so they're expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Next one is fire giants. They're fine. They're not great XP. They're not terrible XP. They're just okay. They're not really worth skipping. I'd avoid them if you can, but if you're if you don't have a ton of Slayer points and you're saving up for things like adding Bone Crusher to your tool belt or Herbicide to your tool belt or whatever, then might as well do them. Chaos Tunnels or Waterfall are the two best places. Use Aggression Potions, Blood Essence, and just deeps them out. They're really easy in EOC. Glaciers, if you have them unlocked, they're maybe the best XP task that Cyrodiil assigns at this level. They're fantastic magic XP, but they are a lot of effort. And if you don't have access to at least, I would say, tier 80 magic weapons, and which most people, I think, have access to at least like a chaotic staff by this point, Harley, do you think that that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say especially like God Wars 2 is really what made stuff more accessible because chaotics cost a lot, and I don't know that they're worth spending Dungeoneering points on anymore unless you like love that. But like, I think God Wars 2 brought in the tier 85s that are like 15 to 30 mil a piece, which is made it way more reasonable for people to have some super good weapons.
Yeah, in worst case you go with the Kaiwir main hand and then like this book is your offhand if you don't have access to port stuff, and if you don't have tier 90s, that's plenty good for Glaciers, and I think maybe a little bit better actually than a chaotic staff now that I think about it. And so yeah, I would say very strongly recommend doing them. It'll take you a while to get it down. Just watch a guide. It's really not difficult once you get the hang of it, and hey, maybe you'll get lucky and get a pair of tier 85 boots as a reward.
And I think that's a very important thing to say about a lot of these tasks, and especially once we get to the 99 to 120 part, like some of these tasks are hard at first, especially if you don't have a lot of combat experience. But if you give yourself time, you will be able to master them, and you'll wonder why you thought they were hard in the first place. So don't get frustrated if you go somewhere like Rippers and you're dying a lot. Like those things destroyed me when I first went there.
Yep. It's absolutely true. I got destroyed at Rippers when I first went there, and Wyverns. So definitely.
Yeah, Wyverns are still the bane of my existence.
But once you learn them, it'll feel very worthwhile. So that you've got Greater Demons. Would suggest doing them at Krotsaroth because I think it's really good money, and especially with Zamorak components being what they are, and also really good, just really good chance to get a pet, and it's pretty AFK, relaxing. If you have tier 90s, if you have tier 80 weapons and tier 80 gear, you might have to pay a little bit more attention, but really pretty easy. If you just need the points, Greater Demons are fine. Just do them in Kuradil's dungeon. They're not great. They're not terrible. They're basically zero money, and they're okay XP, which is why, unless you really need points and you earn, don't care about Krill because you have the pet already or something, I would just do them at the Zami boss. Then we've got Grotworms. The mature Grotworms are the only ones worth doing. They're bad, but they're not bad enough to be worth blocking or canceling compared to a lot of the other tasks on the list. They're just okay in terms of money. They're just okay in terms of XP. They're just mediocre across the board, but not bad enough to be worth avoiding.
And you can rip through them pretty fast too. So
yeah,
quick task.
Yeah, their HP still hasn't been updated, it seems like. So yeah, you could just absolutely destroy them. So it's a lot of Slayer points. So that's, I would definitely do it. Hellhounds, if this were old school, then you would do Hellhounds to farm your hard clues. But this isn't old school. They're pretty terrible. I did them recently on my Iron Man account. They're real awful. The only reason to do them is that they're extremely AFK and reasonably good combat XP for the level of people who are usually doing them. I wouldn't avoid them like the plague, but I wouldn't rush to do them. They aren't as good as they used to be. And of course, they're no money whatsoever and only drop gold charms, so they're pretty useless as far as that goes. Iron Dragons, I would do them if you need the points, skip them if you don't. Pretty bad XP, really bad profit. Calphites, do them if you are pet hunting at KQ. Definitely do them if you are pet hunting at Calphite King. Don't do them otherwise. Living Rock Creek.
Aren't the Exile Calphite Guardians relatively decent XP?
They're okay. They're okay. I think the problems are, one, they're pretty far from a bank, so you have to travel all the way there. If you don't, obviously you don't have access to max guild portal, so you can't get there that quickly. And yeah, that's my main issue with them. They're just real far from the bank. And,
well, if you have the Desert Lodestone, they're not that bad, honestly. It's like right down the.
They're not bad. You could do the Guardians. I kind of forgot about them. I'm not sure what the Slayer XP per hour on them is, because just remember Calphite's well, the XP for Slayer might be okay. The combat XP is decent enough. But I just think there are other tasks that you should try to prioritize. Maybe don't skip them, but definitely don't prefer.
Yeah, that's fair. I remember them when I was training up. I enjoyed doing them for their relative ease and XP, like you said, in combat. And I think from what I remember, their Slayer was pretty good, but I unfortunately can't remember numbers. But yeah.
Yeah, maybe give them a look. But my guess is you'll find other things that are a little bit better. Living Rock Creatures. I think that they're pretty terrible. You can only attack one at a time, which sucks. Their drops aren't very good anymore, and I just really kind of wouldn't do them at all. They used to be good when they first came out, but not so anymore. They have relatively high defense for their level, so definitely wouldn't do it. Mythal Dragons. I would only do these if you have like a tier 85 or better magic gear and can just rip through them super fast, because they're such a short task. You can get points with them. Otherwise, don't do them. Steel Dragons, same thing. Only worth doing if you want to just rip through a task for a lot of points, but bad XP, bad money. Sukwas. I think, weirdly, these are really good in old school. They're real terrible in RS3, like really, really bad. Only like 50 XP per kill, which is just real kind of brutal. So definitely wouldn't do Sukwas unless you're training farming with spirit trees and you're trying to farm the ingredients to protect your spirit trees. That'd be the only reason to even consider them. I have them on my list personally. Yes, SAR. I have them on my blocked list personally. I don't think they're worth doing. They're pretty terrible XP. Only 77 per kill, which is kind of awful. Uh, and don't really give you any money. Tormented Demons are awesome. Very good XP, very good profit. Really are not viable without tier 90 weapons, though. So that's something to consider. I could kind of talk later about a method for it, but the easiest method is to just use melee for them with an upgraded Dark Light and all of your perks. Use a Steel Titan with specials, and use a Dreadnip that's set to do magic attacks. That way you're attacking them with 3 styles at once, and while there will be occasions where you won't be able to melee them, they'll switch prayers because of your Titan spec or because of your Dreadnip. And so that's kind of the most efficient way to do them. They're really great money, solid XP, but are a lot of effort. And if you're not used to them or used to bosses, you're going to die quite a lot to them, and they'll probably be very frustrating, but I think they're worth learning. Yeah, and then Water Fiends. Water Fiends, probably arguably the best Crimson Charms in the game. Really good Slayer XP. They were buffed, so they're not AFK anymore. You kind of eat a little bit, especially at lower levels, but I think they're pretty solid. I don't know, Harley, have you done Water Fiends post buff?
Yeah, I have. They're definitely a good task for on your way to 99. They definitely even at max combat now. I feel like they kind of f me up sometimes, but at the lower levels they are good XP, and like you said, very very good charm rates. And I think if you can make okay money depending on your luck and drops there, and
it is okay. They're great charms, solid XP. They're money wise, they're not so good, but that's okay. The money will be made at Slayer starting around level 90 and then going up. And 99 to 120 you can make up if you do it correctly. So that's kind of when it kicks in. So then Firewatch, if you have a Sun Spear, especially if you're an Iron Man, they're very worth doing. If you don't have a Sun Spear, I wouldn't recommend it because Sun Spear improves the drop table significantly and creates corpses for you. At higher levels of Slayer, they're not worth doing. I have them blocked currently, but at lower levels of Slayer, they're pretty solid, especially if that Sun Spear. Terror Dog's terrible block ban. Remove them from the game. I don't even know. Not good. Really just no redeemable qualities. Sorry. Bloodvelds are solid XP, especially if you do the mutated ones, and drop lots of green charms. If you're kind of wish in summoning, they're definitely worth doing, but definitely not worth skipping or blocking. Warped Tortoises are terrible XP, really far away, hard to get to, and have an annoying kill mechanic. Don't do them. Have them blocked. Aberrant Spectres, they've been improved. They used to be a pretty bad task. Now they're actually pretty excellent. They have a really great drop table and are a lot of money, especially for a mid-level player. Dust Devils are very good Crimson Charms and decent XP, but not very good money. So I would definitely do them. And you can use Aggression Potions there, which is nice. Do them in the Chaos Tunnels. Automatons are awesome. Even some high-level Slayers have them on their prefer list. They're one of the best XP tasks in the game. Unfortunately, aren't very good money anymore because a lot of their value came from drops that were kind of hard to come by. But now, because so many people do automatons, they aren't very good anymore. Definitely would do this task. Skeletal Wyverns are fine. They aren't great anymore. They're not like awesome like they were in old school or something, but they're good enough to be worth doing. Strike Worms, I would cancel them, ban both of them. Strike Worms are really bad. Gargoyles are fantastic GP, even at the highest levels. Mediocre Slayer XP, but not compared to some of the other stuff. Muzpa are some of the best XP in the game. I have them on my prefer list personally. Use Ancient Magics because they do double damage. Nihils are some of the best money in game in general. You can make up to 8 or 9 mil an hour doing Nihils. I would prefer them if you care about money. They're not very good XP though. Aquanites are good if you have a seed aside and want farming XP. Otherwise, not worth doing them because they got buffed and their HP is high enough where they're kind of a pain to do. Necraels, great Crimson Charms, good XP, not great XP. Nightmares are good, really good GP, really good XP. And yeah. Oh, and Ascension members. Ascension members, Rarari are the best money. Gladius are kind of a combination of the two. And then I do Legions personally for the chance. And then Spiritual Mages is kind of mentioning here. They're just phenomenal money, but they're kind of annoying to get to some extent. But you know, they're probably worth doing. They're not very good XP either, but definitely very good money.
Yeah, and spiritual mages you can they're like paper right now. So like if you train them before, they're definitely going to get buffed. They're gonna make like 3 to 4 mil an hour, and you're gonna finish a task in like just a ridiculously quick amount of time. They even like I used for a long time. I used just a crystal bow there, which is T70, and like it was just ridiculous. They die in like 2 hits. Like it's nothing that you really have to think about. The Ascension creatures, what is the one that you have to like fight from behind?
Oh, don't do those. I forget their exact name, but don't ever do those. Terrible XP. Their drop table's not worth doing.
They're better XP than all of the other ones, though.
Yeah, but it's their mechanic makes them annoying, and you can't kill them as fast. So I think I think the best XP is definitely the bosses themselves. It's like a ton of XP, and I think Gladius are the second best. I've found Capsarius really annoying to fight.
I mean, it depends how much.
It
depends how much effort you want to put in, but I've definitely gotten more XP out of those than the other. I never did the bosses on task, but as far as out of the other monsters there, I've definitely been able to get to a point where you could get more XP. Like, you have to be super aware, but you can totally do it.
Yeah, that's fair. I suppose that could be the case now that it's better XP to do those. I kind of think that the two, if you're going to do Ascension creatures, I would either do Rarari AFK, rip through the task in 10 minutes and get a bunch of keystones and make a lot of money, or just do the bosses, get tons of XP, and do it for the pet chance. But yeah, that's definitely fair. If you're looking for something in between, maybe Caps better than Gladius. Okay, well that pretty much covers Curadel, because the next task is Abyssal Demons. So that's when you're level 85, and by then you should be switched to Morvan.
All right. Awesome. Do we want to list, like, real quick some of the best tasks to do at 85, or do you think that'll be covered mostly at the 99 to 120 level?
I think mostly the 99 to 120 level. Really, all the tasks that require 85 or more Slayer are worth doing. Except for the strike worms. Lava strike worms are pretty good if you have a wilderness sword. They're like decent XP, especially if you get a contract and use the demonic skull. But then there's the downside of being in the wilderness. Ice strike worms are not worth doing. All the other tasks, 85 and up, are all just excellent. Except camels. I wouldn't do camels, but that's one of this. I personally think they're quite bad. But all the other ones are pretty good.
All right. Well, I think then it is time for the main event, I guess you would say, and we'll go ahead and start talking about what training methods, strategies for getting from 99 to 120 Slayer. The first thing that we're going to talk about real quick here is minigames. Now, there are a couple of minigames that will give you VIP Slayer tickets. The first one is one that kind of comes with some caveats because it's not necessarily the best, most time efficient thing. But Cabbage, Facepunch, Bonanza is a great way to earn VIP Slayer tickets if you just want an easy way to go about earning them if you just kind of, don't want to push for 120 hard right now, but you just kind of want to be ready for when, 120 Slayer launches in June. You could just start, doing Cabbage, Facepunch, Bonanza in your spare time, trying to build up some tickets. And the other minigame option is Rush of Blood, which I'm going to let David talk about because I don't really know much about it. So go ahead, David.
Yeah, sure. Rush of Blood is a weekly. It's Morven's special Slayer challenge. It's a completionist requirement to do the platinum version all the way up to the highest waves. Essentially, I'd recommend doing the platinum version. It's not super difficult. I would use your best hybrid gear with magic, ranged and melee weapons. You're going to need protection from anti-fire. You're going to need dark light in case there are tormented demons, and I would use overloads or blood essence. Either one is fine. Steel Titan is preferable. And essentially, don't worry about it if at first you're not doing super well or struggling. It takes a while to get used to all the gear switching that you need to do, but eventually you'll get really good at it, and you get quite a few tickets from that task. I find that if I do that challenge even once every couple of weeks, I've got more than enough VIP tickets to sustain, quite a bit of Slayer. And plus, you'll get some good rewards at the end. You'll get most wanted cards for things like Glaciers, which improve the chance of getting a rare drop from the respective creature. And you'll get an XP book, which is nice, and some various other awards, charms, a few other things. You could even get rare drops, so you could get a pair of Glacier boots, for example.
Yes, I think both of those things are a good thing to do, whether you're going for 120 now or if you just want to prepare to go for 120 in June when it officially comes out. Either way, if you start doing Rush of Blood, like David said, every few weeks now, or try to do it every week, you will have enough VIP tickets that it'll make your Slayer journey even nicer, make it easier to try out the new monsters that come out too with 120 Slayer. And the next thing we have to cover here is Reaper tasks. Now, of course, everybody's probably relatively aware of these are a daily task you can do that you get from Reaper that assigns you a random boss to do. A couple things to say is there are some options for how you can get better XP, or no, but more Reaper points out of this, I believe. If you turn on group tasks and larger tasks, it will give you more Reaper points, which it's honestly a great way to make money while getting some Slayer XP. I don't know, David, is the Slayer XP that comes from Reaper tasks all that good, or what are your thoughts on it?
Not at the higher levels. Interesting I learned this playing Iron Man, and about level 1 Slayer to around 75 Slayer or so, the most efficient way to train Slayer is actually just to do Reapers and do basically not train Slayer at all. Like if you do, so I did a Slayer task Reaper task at level 1, I killed Chaos Elemental, and I went from 1 to 31 Slayer just off that one Reaper task. And I did 6 or 7 Reapers and was already 50 plus Slayer. So at lower levels, it's phenomenal because the XP from a Reaper assignment is not based on your level. It's a fixed rate. So at level 1 Slayer, doing one Reaper task can net you something like 20k Slayer XP, which from level 1, 20k is just a huge jump. So you could skip a lot of those awful assignments and awful Slayer masters early on just by doing Slayers a daily for a week or two if you're building an alt or whatever. But really, you're not doing Reapers for the Slayer XP. It's a nice bonus. It's fun. A lot of times you can get a Reaper task that is also a Slayer task, which is kind of nice. But really, it's just a kind of bonus.
It's a good way to fund the more expensive parts of Slayer too, because every certain amount of tasks you can make 20-some mil off the Hydrix jewelry. So yeah, plus
exactly.
Work on your trim comp requirements or comp requirements now too. So yeah,
yep.
And it usually doesn't take, most tasks don't take that long. And the next thing we have to cover here is the May Slayer weekend. And this has been happening for the past few years, so we're just kind of assuming this is going to happen this year. Of course, there has been no announcement. That would come up in about a month from now, but I would be surprised if they didn't have a May Slayer weekend this year, just because Menaphos is coming anyway, so probably just to help people prepare. And this is just a whole weekend where every task that you get is VIP, and you get 50% more experience than that. I don't know.
And I think you also get more Slayer as well.
Oh yeah, it's usually double Slayer points too, I believe.
Something like that, yeah.
Yep. So that would be something to plan to take part in May. And the next segment we have to talk to about here is I'm going to let David do an explanation of task waiting and kind of what that means.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount of detail, but essentially every single task has a weight of its likelihood to assign. The way that the likelihood of a task is determined is you take all of the possible tasks that you could get, add up all of those values. So say it's 20 tasks and all the values are 200. And then you divide by that number of tasks. And so basically the formula works out to where the higher the weight of the task, the higher percentage it is. So if you have a task that's weighted at 12 and there is a total weight of 200, when you add up all the weights, you have a 12 out of 200 chance of getting task A. Whereas if a task had a weight of 5, you would have a 5 out of 200 task of getting task B. So basically, you could, when you're deciding which task to prefer and which task to block, this could be especially important. So if you like creature A and creature B equally, you might, and number A has a weight of 12 and B has a weight of 5. The way that weighting works is, the way that preferring tasks works is it doubles the weight. So if you were to pick option 1, it would double the weight from 12 to 24. Whereas if you pick option 2, it only doubles the weight from 5 to 10. So preferring task B has much less effect overall on your likelihood to get that task than task A. So when you're kind of going down the nitty gritty of which one do you want to prefer, you might want to prefer the one with a higher weight. At the same time, if you have 2 tasks that you hate about the same, but only one more slot to block, then you might want to block the task that has the higher weight because it's more likely that you get that one. So, for like, say, I don't know specifics here, I'd have to look them up. And these are all available on Wiki. They're super, super easy to see. You just type in, like, Morvran task list or Kuradal task list, and it has the weights right next to them. We say Camels has a weight of 12, Pterodogs have a weight of 5. You hate them about the same, but can only block one. It'd be better for you to block Camels because you're much more likely to get them than you are Pterodogs. And of course, the weights change based also on unlocks based on quests. So it's also important to factor in which creatures you have unlocked. So there might be a reason, for example, say Aquanites. I recently took Aquanites off of my unlocked tasks list because basically them adding their weight made it less likely I would get the task that I wanted. Even though I don't necessarily dislike Aquanites, I would do them if I had to because of farming XP, whatever. There's just no reason for me to do it because of how the weighting works. I know, does that seem to make sense, Harley? I'm not sure. Hope that was easy enough to follow. I'm not sure if I explained that.
It did. I didn't really think about the fact that you might want to not have some creatures unlocked. It's just kind of fascinating to me. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Something I did not really understand.
And that's a little less important than the which task to prefer, because the weight of the task can really make a difference in whether it'd be efficient to prefer them versus not prefer.
Okay, yeah, sure, that makes sense. All right, I think that wraps up waiting, so we will move on. So what we're going to be covering here is kind of what monsters you should be killing. Now, there's going to be a few different ways we're going to be breaking these up, so I'm just going to give a quick readout of how we're thinking about each task. So we're going to have tasks based on best XP an hour, best AFK tasks, best charm rates, best money making, best all-around methods. So of course that means tasks that give you decent XP, are kind of AFK, kind of good money making, whatever would be a mix. We're also going to talk about tasks worth doing just because you're fighting a boss. You're either getting a pet chance or it's good GP an hour, things like that can make bosses worth doing. Also, there are some bosses that are pretty good XP in the game. So David's kind of gonna run through the tasks and kind of put them into one of those categories, or possibly multiple, because of course some of them fall into multiple categories. So I will hand it over to you, David.
Yeah, so I've kind of done a lot of research for this particular segment. The first thing we wanted to address, I think, was area of effect. So in terms of best XP per hour, there are 3 different methods. The first is Mechanized Chinchompas. What surprised me is I found that in most instances, Mechanized Chinchompas were actually better XP than using melee and a scythe. This isn't always the case. There are some places where a scythe is a little bit better, but at a place like, for example, Edemu, Mechanized Chinchompas really shine. And for those of you who don't know what they do, Mechanized Chinchompas are a tier 78 weapon that turn every single ability into an AoE. So when you snapshot, when you use the ability snapshot, you snapshot every single thing in a 3x3 area. Same thing with tendrils, rapid fire, snipe, whatever. And also, Soul Split works with all of them. So say you snipe 7k and it does 7k damage in a 3x3 area to every creature, you Soul Split all of that back. Additionally, if creatures are able to stack on top of each other, and this isn't always something that happens, it also affects all of those. So Chinchompas are really OP. The downside, they're quite expensive. If you die, you lose all of them. Don't bring more than 9 or 10. And if you aren't using full manual, then it's much harder to control how often you auto attack. And so if you're using Revolution, you'll auto attack more often, especially you'll auto attack when you don't necessarily want to. When you use an auto attack, it uses a Chinchompa. So those are some things to kind of bear in mind. If you do it really well and you focus a lot and you're really tryharding, you would use maybe something like 7 or 8 Chinchompas for an entire Edemu task. And so in that case, I think they're quite worth using. And Harley, you were saying you haven't yet used Chinchompas for
Nope.
Slayer yet, right?
I have not.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out. Although, so the second is Scythe. Scythe is overall the best Slayer item in the game. If you can't afford a Scythe, definitely get a Dragon Rider Lance. Dragon Rider Lance is phenomenal. The reason it's so good is it has AoE thresholds. So that's Quake and Hurricane. It also has Meteor Strike, which is an AoE ultimate that's quite powerful for when Berserk is on cooldown. Being able to Berserk and use Cleave, Assault, or Cleave, Hurricane, Quake inside your Berserk can just absolutely destroy your enemies. The downside to it is it requires you to pay quite a lot of attention because their thresholds, Revolution won't cast them for you automatically. The third is
It's
Magic.
A nice place, like we said in part 1. If you want to make it slightly more AFK, this is a good time to turn on ability queuing because it can allow you to be just at least a little bit more AFK. You only have to click every 15 seconds on threshold or something like that instead of having to always be ready to click on one.
Yep. The third is Magic. So Magic AoEs, all the Magic AoEs, so Chain, Debreath, and Corruption Blast are all basics. You could put them towards the front of your rotation. In my opinion, the most efficient way to do this, because of the various cooldowns, is Dragon Breath first, Corruption second, Chain third. Some people will do Corruption first, Dragon Breath second. The reason I do Dragon Breath first is because it has a shorter cooldown, and so you end up doing, I think, slightly more DPS that way. And that allows you to maintain a fairly high level of DPS while being almost completely AFK. I would still recommend looking every minute or so to use Sunshine when Sunshine comes on cooldown. But if you're doing a task like Dark Beasts or Abyssal Demons, you can feel pretty comfortable in your efficiency level by just using Magic and almost totally AFKing with aggression potions. Yeah. So now that we've got the kind of relative styles covered,
we're
going to go to... Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, Harley. Going to the relative tasks. So again, I organized my spreadsheet in alphabetical order. I hope that's not too annoying for people. I grouped tasks first, though, in preferred lists. So in my opinion, the optimal preferred list, and I'll go through each task when I go through them alphabetically. My optimal preferred list is Mammoths, Ripper Demons, Living Wyverns, Elves, Calgarian Demons, and Edemu. I think that list are kind of the 7 arguably best XP tasks in game. They're extremely efficient to do. The ones that you could substitute, if you don't have 115 Dungeoneering, Muzpa is what I'd substitute for Edemu. If you don't have Muzpa, then Dark Beast. So I think that, and those two, Muzpa and Dark Beast, are the two that you could sub out if you say hate Mammoths or hate Wyverns or can't stand the Ripper Demon special or whatever. Those are the two I'd sub out. The kind of last resort would be Abyssal Demons is the other thing you can sub in there, but because of how crowded those are now, I think that they're fine to do. You should never skip Abyssal Demons, but I wouldn't prefer them just because of how annoying they are to find the wolves.
Yeah, and make sure that you actually give, like Rippers and Mammoths and even Wyverns a chance. Like we said earlier, they have some mechanics that are hard to catch on to. Rippers, jump to the ceiling, and that can be very frustrating. But once you get, perked out, like we suggested above, once you have Dark Light and all of that stuff, your DPS will become so high if you get your rotation down that you won't notice that final jump to the ceiling. AoE will pretty much never happen for you. Mammoths, in my opinion, are probably the best designed out of all the Elite Slayer monsters. They just work very well with the RuneScape movement system. You just have to move out of the way when you see them preparing to charge, and there's enough lead time that once you've done a little bit, you can catch on to them super quickly. And as far as Wyverns go, they are freaking monsters who just eat at your health. I believe that things like stuns and stuff like that work on those, but I think David will probably talk about
they don't. Yeah, elite mobs can't be stunned. You get wrecked. So what I do, this is not the most efficient in terms of GP whatsoever. And I often scrimshaw sacrifice these, which is something we haven't talked about because it's treasure hunter related. I got a ton of them when Mimic came out. Basically just farmed Mimic for like 2 days straight. Got a bunch of sacrifice scrimshaws. It doubles the amount of Slayer and combat XP you get in exchange for not getting drops. But anyways, I bring a yak full of Guthix Restore potions, which heal you for 500 but don't affect your stats or your adrenaline. And I just go ham, just DPS them as hard as I possibly can with magic. Just basically hold down the Guthix Restore key and go through an entire yak of Guthix Restore pots. That's how I kill them. The other way to kill them is to soul split flick. So you'll flick between Prey Magic, Prey Range, and soul split flick your thresholds. That's another way to do it that doesn't cost tons of GP. It's just a little bit more effort. And I kind of don't care about the GP very much, so I just hold down the brew key and kill them like that.
Can't your defensives help there some too or something?
Oh, for sure, but it slows down your DPS, and which means you slow down your XP. My method for doing Ripper Demons nets just over 700k XP now, which is pretty phenomenal Slayer XP. So yeah.
All right, cool. We can move on.
And then, then my next is in terms of best GP per hour. I have Black Dragons. That assumes you do Queen Black Dragon. Rune Dragons, Ascension members, which assumes that you either do Rari or do the bosses. The bosses obviously are entirely RNG dependent and also dependent on your merching skills with keys. So that one definitely comes with a caveat. Nihils, Tormented Demons, Greater Demons, Aviancy, which of course you would do Kriara and Kurl Tutsaroth, those are kind of what I consider the best GP tasks in game, although not necessarily very good XP. And then I have what I call the casual optimal list of tasks. So this is for those of you who kind of want to just chill out when you do Slayer and not worry too much about hyper efficiency, so you're not doing Ripper Demons or Mammoths, things like that. So I have Abyssal Demons, Dark Beasts, Ganodermic Beasts, Celestial Dragons, Muzpa, Kriara, which is of course Aviancy, and Nihils. And then so those are kind of how I broke down I have optimal in terms of XP, best GP, and then kind of casual optimal. And those would be the tasks that I would prefer. I don't know, Harley, do you have favorite tasks that you would add, or do you have comments about some of these or disagreements or anything?
I mean, the ones of these I've done, I would definitely agree with. There's some of these that I have yet to fight because when I was going for 99, I wasn't max combat yet, and I wasn't really trying to mid max. As far as XP an hour goes, yeah, my main comment was really on mammoths are probably my favorite tasks in general in the game, as far as they are good XP and I just have fun doing them.
Yep. Okay, so to kind of run through the list here that I have real quick, so I have Abyssal Demons and I basically put these on between 0 and 3 stars is how I did them, and I have them in terms of XP, GP, AFK-ness. I didn't do charms because I haven't collected green or gold charms in so long, only crimson or blues. I will make a comment if they're good crimson or blue charms. Usually at this level, nobody is really using gold or green charms anymore, so I'm going to kind of assume that you're with me there. So Abyssal Demons... Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
what were you
real quick, I have to go AFK for a minute, so you can you can just run through and I'll tag back when I get back.
Also, I have to go in half an hour, by the way. So just in terms of thinking.
Gotcha.
Time wise,
I don't know what your list is like, but I think we should be probably done by around then. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you'll still be recording. I just won't be here, so don't call on me. And when I get back, I'll interject.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
All right, so essentially for my list here, I've got Abyssal Demons. I have rated as a 2 on XP per hour, 1 in GP per hour, and 2 in terms of AFK. So for my notes, the optimal method is melee with halberd range, aggression potions at the Slayer Tower top floor. The alternative, more AFK method, is use magic. I would highly recommend using Blood Essence, a flat damage aura. You'll have 100% accuracy with tier 90s. And I think even with tier 85s, you should have 100% accuracy, especially if you, of course, use the God Wars Dungeon 2 tier 85s. And so you should be prioritizing AoE, use Soul Split and single stat prayer. So that means you should be using an Amulet of Zealots for this task. Acheron Mammoth, I have a 3 on as its rating for XP per hour. It's pretty bad in terms of GP and obviously not AFK at all. I would strongly recommend doing these with melee. I now prefer Scythe over Drygores. The reason for that is that because you have to move fairly frequently, even though Drygores are better DPS against a single target, because you're moving so often, I find that I'm canceling Destroy before I want to. And so I'd rather have Quake and Hurricane, which of course are instantly. So I like that a lot more. Adamant Dragon, skip or block, not worth it. Erets, they're still solid XP and solid GP. It's still possible to cannon them on Mazcab by running around the rock to save spot, going ham with a scythe. But I think the easier method is to do them in Curdle's dungeon with dual wield melee. I would no longer prefer them, however, because you'll get them quite frequently, and they're not so good. They're pretty decent charm droppers, and so are Abyssal Demons actually. Ascension members, I think Rarari are great money. Just use range, prioritize AoE, Soul Split, Essence, Zealots. Do have Sling for money. Otherwise, I would do the bosses. As Harley was saying earlier, Capsaris, I guess, could get you good XP, but I would kind of do one or the other. Either do Rarari. Automatons are very good money. Single target melee is how I would do these. AoEs are bad there because if you target too many of them at once, they'll start doing the special attack. And while it's okay, it could kill you pretty quickly if you aren't really, really careful. And even if you are careful, you could still get KO'd. And so I would do single target. Avanzi, obviously, do Kriara, very good XP, great money, pretty AFK. The try-hard method here would be to use magic against hard mode Kriara. The method's pretty simple. There's lots of guides. You use vulnerability when you tag it, and metamorphosis as soon as possible, and then walk it. Walking was removed from a lot of the higher tier bosses, but still exists at lower tier bosses. You could still walk Armadillo to avoid all the specials. Aqua Knight skip unless you need farming XP. Black Demons do them. Pretty good charm droppers, decent XP, not good money, relatively AFK at a high level. Camel Warriors skip if you're not doing Master Quest cape requirements. Celestial Dragons are awesome. Consider preferring them. I think that ranged is probably the best method for these. They're weak to ranged. Don't go melee distance. Use essence for sure. Legendary pet really shines here because they're kind of hard, and a legendary pet can pick up stuff for you. Chaos giants are fine. Don't prefer them. Don't block them. Shapeshifters, I skip these. If you need to do the Master Quest Cape requirement, though, you should do them. They're not terrible XP. They're not good. I just find them kind of annoying and kind of far away to get to, and they're not really worth it for me. Dagannoth, do them if you're doing the bosses. Dark Beasts are awesome. Try hard method would be the melee. The AFK method is to mage or range with cannons and aggro potions. Use both cannon and aggro pots. Really good XP, decent money, super AFK. Edemu, either melee with a scythe or use use Chinchompas. I think Essence is good here. They're great money, solid XP. Elves, phenomenal XP. Use melee with the scythe. This is one of the tasks I would overload. You get kind of destroyed with Essence. Gargoyles only do it if you're slaying for money. It's bad XP. Ganos are all around very good. Consider preferring them. Again, aggression potions, zealots, blood spells can be useful there. Glaciors, Essence, Zealots, they're really, really good XP. Consider preferring. Greater Demons, consider preferring if you're doing Krill, otherwise block them. Rotworms, block. Ice Strike Worms, block. Iron Dragons, block. Obviously, I'm saying block for a lot of these. Some of them you won't be able to block all of them for, but definitely not so great. Next, Ice Strike Worm. Sorry, I already talked about those. Calgarian Demons, one of the best tasks in the game. Melee is better than Mage. Use Darklight. Use a Nihil and an Accuracy Aura. It'll help a lot. They're phenomenal XP and very good money. If you don't have melee auras activated or you want to use Maniacal, Magic is fine as well. I just think melee is a lot more consistent in terms of fast kills. Calphites, either do the bosses or skip them. Lava Strike Worms, do them. Consider preferring them if you are not afraid of the wilderness. If you're scared of the wilderness, block. Basically, Lava Strike Worms, you should either do them all the time or never do them. It's kind of one or the other. Usually, either you like them or you don't. Living Wyverns are phenomenal. Use magic. Stay near the bonfire. Make sure that you don't get wrecked. Prayer Flick or Camp Soul Split and just eat constantly, as I was talking about earlier. Mithril Dragons, block. Muzpa, they're phenomenal in pretty much every way except for charms. Use magic. Ancient Spellbook damage. Prioritize your AoEs. Essence is really good. You could use Zealots there as well. Next, is Jadinkos. If you're doing the Slayer pet. I don't know if we didn't talk about this earlier, but the way the Slayer pet works is you get a random chance of getting it every time you kill something. It's not based on XP, so because you could kill so many Jadinkos so quickly, they're pretty good for doing the pet. They can be relatively AFK if you use magic. Do them if you need the points, otherwise I would just skip them. Necrael, if you need points, it's not that bad of a task. Decent Crimson Charms, but really not very worth it. I skip them when I get them. But they aren't terrible enough to be worth using a block slot. Nightmares, do them. Really solid money, decent XP, use magic. Nihils, I do them if you need money. Prefer them if you slay for money. Not very good XP, and they're certainly not AFK. Rippers, maybe the best XP in the game. Prefer them, learn them, love them. They'll be difficult at first. If you're having problems, you could use Vampirism. Scrimshaw will help a lot. If you're still having problems, use a Vampirism Aura. Don't use a Yak. Use a Titan, because it's better, honestly, to not use a Yak and just use a Vampirism, Scrim, and Aura, because if you have a Yak, then you'll be relying on eating lots of food. And the more food you eat, your adrenaline will go down, and so you do a lot less DPS and end up just taking more damage, having to bank more frequently. It's better to learn them properly. Bring Weapon Poison if you need it. Weapon Poison is a common drop, so you can replenish yourself. They drop Sharks, so you really shouldn't need to bring any because you just replenish yourself with the shark drops. And also, if you're having some problems, you could use a Dread Nip, which will help a little. But yeah, just use a Dark Light and a Drygore offhand and go absolutely ham with the melee DPS. Don't use Berserk unless you have an Adrenaline Potion that you could use, because if you Zerk without an Adrenaline Potion, usually you can't kill them fast enough for them to just absolutely you. So definitely use Zerk as much as possible, but only do it if you have an Adren Pot. Rune Dragons are phenomenal. Do them if you care about money. Don't do them if you don't. They also drop a cool pet and the cool outfit pieces. Shadow creatures, do them if you want the pet. They're fine. They're really all around just okay, except they normally drop charms. Steel dragons, skip or block. Tsar, block. Tormented demons, do them. Melee with magical nips and steel titan. They're really good money, pretty solid XP. Firewatch, skip or block. Lotto Fiends, do them, especially if you want charms. They're okay money, okay XP at this level, but not very good for anything. Black Dragons, do them if you want the pets or money from QBD. Skip them if you don't care about the pets, have the pets, or don't want to do QBD.
And QBD pet's like the cutest pet in the game, so you should totally get it.
Yeah, I think I've got a cuter version of QBD pet, aka the Yakimar pet, but agree to disagree there.
I mean, Yakimar's okay, but no QBD.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I think the Yaka animations are pretty cool.
They are. I mean, yeah, you can tell the difference in age between the boss pets there / bosses.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that pretty much goes to, and that was pretty quick. I think that it would be really helpful if people sent either in Discord or in-game specific feedback on methods for different features that you would like us to go more in depth on. So if you're wondering, like, how do I do, Ripper Demons, I could do kind of a more specific segment on Ripper Demons. But for the purposes of this was kind of more just an overview of every task, because it would be just really lengthy to do like a 10-minute guide on every single one of these. But if you do have questions, then feedback would be really helpful in directing us for which tasks to be specific on and which ones people kind of have figured out.
Yeah, and if we end up getting enough follow-up submitted to us, it would be... I would love to do, we could do a whole show at some point, just dedicated to a follow-up type thing on a topic that we've covered. I don't know if that will happen or not, but if that's something you're interested in, yeah, feel free to ask questions, and we will collect those, and if we get enough, we can definitely record an episode, or maybe just do a quick segment at the beginning of the show or something. But, I don't know if I've said this on the podcast specifically, but I kind of want a lot of these episodes to remain timeless. Of course, this 120 Slayer one won't be timeless. It's definitely in our plans that once Menophos is here, we will be doing an updated guide to this for the future of Slayer, probably a month or two after Menophos is out, once we know how all that shakes out. So yeah, we could also possibly cover more stuff in there.
Yeah, and something that Harley and I were talking about when we were planning the show is whether to do live or not. And I think reasons we chose not to do it live was that I feel, especially for me, that we could respond to your feedback or questions much more effectively if we have some time to prepare a fully thought out response or a full list of things, so we don't leave things out or respond without giving you the full information that you might need. We would discuss what we should be responding to and things like that. So I think that will make this the kind of guided episodes that are guided based on feedback even helpful for people.
Yeah, I think so. So you said that was the end of your list, right? As far as monsters go?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't know if do you have anything to add here kind of in the end cap as far as something you wanted to say or stuff you didn't touch on?
That's pretty much it in terms of the specific creatures. I guess I didn't talk about bosses specifically, but that's kind of self-explanatory. The way that I currently have my Slayer task preferred is I have all boss tasks. So I have Black Dragons, Caliphites, I have Aviances, Greater Demons, ascension creatures, basically only boss tasks because I'm going for IFB. But yeah, I mean, I think that if you have a Vitalis or you just want to go on boss pet hunting, then Slayer is obviously one of the efficient ways to do that. Even though boss tasks with Slayer aren't the best, doing bosses with a Slayer task because of how good the Slayer helm is will always be more efficient.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if we've touched on this like in depth, but something that is definitely a good thing to do. You kind of mentioned it is, save up your Slayer points or if you have a bunch saved up now, a good way to spend them is basically that preferred list that we covered at the beginning of this, the best XP preferred list. The best way to train Slayer is just skip every task beyond that preferred list and just do those, and you can get to 120 astoundingly fast if you were just doing the tasks that are like 400k plus an hour in XP in the game.
Yeah,
Anyways,
yeah, absolutely.
I think that is going to do it for us. Thank you very much for listening to part 2 here. Make sure to check out part 1 if you somehow missed that being posted. That is up in the podcast feed and on the YouTube. And we will be back in 2 weeks with our next episode. Not sure what we're going to be covering yet, but that will I'll probably announce that on the main show. So, go ahead and listen to those episodes and we will announce what we are going to be covering. And also remember, if you would like to support this podcast, you can go to, I hope I get this right, I believe it's tip.runeweek.com and you can donate. You can also go to just runeweek.com and there is an article there that kind of lays out the goals. Yeah, tip.runeweek.com is right. I just went there. But there's an article on runeweek.com that kind of lays out the goals for the show, what you can unlock. We have, goals all the way ranging from me doing some quest stream all the way up to you getting weekly episodes of the show, for you guaranteeing more seasons of the show. Right now, we're guaranteeing at least 1 season. If you like what we're doing and would like to see even more of it, even more often, please go check that out. Thank you very much to our people who have already donated. We've already raised $30, which is fantastic. We are well on our way to meeting that goal. And you can reach me in game at Harley Q Win. That is Harley, the letter Q, and Win, W-I-N. So if you want to find me, go ahead and look me up that way. Of course, spaces between those 3 things I said too. And David, where can people reach you in game?
So my name in game is DBL space poison spelled the usual way. You can also reach me in game. I'm I play way too much of this game, so I'm online all the time. And you can of course reach me on Discord as well by posting either in the general chat of RuneScape Weekly, which I am often in, or just send me a direct message in Discord and most likely respond to that as well.
Yeah. And thank you all very much for listening, and catch you on the flip side.